Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game. A lot of you requested from the Biel Chess Festival. It's Aravindh Chithambaram versus Frederik Svane, younger brother of Rasmus Svane. And it's a really wild game. Really some beautiful lines have been played, but there are a couple of lines that were not played that are just, will definitely blow your mind, I think. So let's dive straight into it and see why you guys recommended it. Pawn to d4 by Aravind. We have knight to f6, knight to f3, and pawn to d5, and pawn to e3, of course. The Colle system, after the Belgian master Edgar D, I think, Colle. And it's sort of like the London system, but not really. And it's becoming more and more popular. Wherever I go, everyone is playing the Colle system. Is just disgusting. And it's very, very hard to deal with at any level. Doesn't matter if you're a grandmaster, doesn't matter if you're 1600. You have to have something ready for it. Because, you go online, you play a couple of games, 2 out of 3 with white Colle system, most certainly. We have pawn to e6, bishop to d3, and pawn to c5. And here b3. C3 is, I think, still the more popular reply, but here we have b3, and now bishop to d6. We have castles, and bishop to b2. So the bishops are nicely placed, aiming at that king side. And as you can see, it's a very attacking setup for white. The knight can easily get into the game. c4 can be played at some point if you need it. Knight can come to e5. So, everything an attacking player would want with the white pieces. We have c captures on d4, e captures, and pawn to b6, preparing to free and get to the light square bishop. And knight b to d2, and it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. After knight b to d2, we have pawn to a5 and bishop to a4. Pawn to a4, sorry. Pawn to a4. We have bishop to a6, offering a trade of light square bishops, and now bishop to b5 would be a very interesting idea, but pawn to c4. Remember, this is rapid, and let me just... since we're in between tournaments, I don't have the clock times enabled for the other tournaments. Let me just enable the clock times for this one, as it's rapid, so you guys probably are interested in what's the situation on the clock. Okay, so both players playing fairly quickly. They started with 15 minutes, and pawn to c4. Bishop to b5 is interesting because you're making that knight wait for a very long time. If the knight gets developed, then you just capture, and that rook might be a little bit misplaced here. And if black captures, again, the knight will have to go to d7. You have a pawn on d4, so it's very nice, and also c4 will happen at any point. White will have a very strong pawn on b5. So that's why pawn to c4, or rather that's why you maybe should be considered. But okay, pawn to c4, knight to c6, and the rook to c1. We have knight b4 attacking the bishop, and bishop to b1. And this, I find this very beautiful when I see the bishop tucked away like this, aiming at the enemy king. This is, that's some romantic play right there. We have rook to c8 and rook to e1, followed by bishop to f4. Okay, the knight can't move for the moment, but the other knight can. We have knight to e5 and knight back to c6, offering a trade of knights. Knight e back to f3. And we have rook to e8. Okay, nicely developing. And it seems white didn't achieve all that much with the Colle system. So let's see how to continue. We have pawn to g3, bishop to h6, and pawn to h4. We have pawn to g6 and knight to g5. And while you can trade, you don't really want to give up your dark square bishop, as you've already weakened the dark squares. And the knight on g5 can be extremely annoying. You constantly have to look out for knight captures on h7, on the f7, on the e6. So that's the reality of things. We have bishop to g7, knight d to f3, and the rook to c7. They're defending on f7. Also, you can double up on the c file. So very useful move. We have knight to e5 and bishop back to b7. Now, white will also have to be a little bit careful if the position opens up. The white king could also be under some checkmating threats. So bishop b7 and pawn to c5. And the problem is what to play here. You could play b captures on c5, and after something like rook captures on c5, get ready to double up, and then we have a trade on e5. Rook captures, queen captures, and then, sorry, not queen captures, first knight to f3 check, and then after queen captures, then you capture on c7, and then rook to c1. White will claim the c file, at least for the moment, and, well, you can play it, but Frederik decides to go a different way. He captures on e5 first, d captures, and now knight to d7. We have c captures on b6, and this is one of the two lines that we're going to cover, and these two are just amazing. Look at this. If you go knight captures on b6, which is kind of what you want to do because you can play queen captures. If you play knight captures, then the problem is after rook captures and queen captures, you have pawn to h5, and there is no defense here. Maybe some, engine like sorcery can get you out of this, but I don't think even that is possible. So the problem is whatever you play, there's just no good way to defend this. If you go, for example, h6, white doesn't care. White will just capture, and after you capture, queen h5. And now look at this, one of the nicer lines that I've found. F captures on g6, bishop captures on g6, and now, okay, you're going to go rook to e7 as your rook is hanging, and also to help out with the defense. Now you play bishop h7 check, king to f8, and bishop to a3. You nicely prevented the rook from moving, and after pawn to d4, as you might be thinking about some rook e3, rook f3 action, pawn to d4, you open up the light square bishop. Maybe you want to deliver a checkmate of your own. Queen g5, and now the black queen cannot move, otherwise queen captures on e7 will be checkmate. So king to e8, you're gonna unpin the rook, and now rook c1, and look at this, queen to d7, bishop g6 check, king to d8, and now you just trade everything. Bishop captures with check, queen captures, king captures, and rook to c7 check, and that is it. King to d8, you're gonna capture on b7. Now you're again attacking the knight and the bishop, and after the knight moves, okay, you have a rook and bishop versus bishop and knight, but of course this is completely winning for white. You're also up 2 pawns, and black just doesn't have any real moves here. So that's what can happen. If you play knight captures on b6. In the game, Frederik goes for the absolute best. Rook captures on c1, queen captures on c1, and now he played pawn to h6, which is not the best idea. I'm going to show you how to play this in order to survive, and this is the only way. You have to play queen captures on b6, and now after queen f4, going after the f7 pawn, rook f8, and now bishop a3. You attack the rook, so f6, and now look at this. This is something that we're not even going to discuss. E captures on f6, rook captures on f6, attacking the white queen, rook captures on e6, attacking the black queen, queen captures on b3 with the white queen still hanging, now rook e8 check, knight to f8, and now queen captures on f6 check. White gives up the queen, bishop captures, rook captures on f8 as the dark square bishop is defending, king g7, and now knight to e6 check, king to h6, and now bishop to c1 with check. And that black king does not have many squares. King to h5, and now you can either repeat with knight to f4 check, knight back to e6, or you can go for rook captures on f6, where it seems that white is very close to checkmating the black king, but realistically, it's a draw. Queen d1 check. You cannot go to g2, otherwise the light square bishop opens up with check. King h2, queen captures on c1, and now you have to go for a repetition because you're no longer up in material. Knight g7 check. And now if you go down the board, then f3 is mate in 1, so you have to go up the board, and then we just have a nice repetition. Knight to f5 check, and okay, a couple of more moves, and it's a repetition. So that is the only, queen b6 is the only move that works for black. But in the game, h6 was played, and now Aravindh goes for the black king. Knight captures on f7, king captures, and bishop to d4. Very, very nice move, defending the b6 pawn, because if you capture it, then look at this, queen c2, and there's no defending that g6 pawn. So the knight is very relevant here. It has to come to f8 to defend the g6 pawn. So knight to f8, we have queen to d2, and now you have to play queen a8. Queen f4 is even better, but capturing that a5 pawn, you're going to have 3 pawns on the queen side. That's enough for a victory. So makes sense with a minute and a half that Frederik has on the clock that Aravindh pushes him to think. But queen to a8 is the best to defend the a5 pawn. He, on the other hand, played pawn to g5, decided to go for a counterattack, and now Aravindh is winning, but you have to find the only idea in the game. So have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. Of course, rook to c1. And now the rook is coming to c7, and that is all there is to it. Not much to be done here. In the game, with king g8, you can still play, and then something like h5, and the black will struggle to find a single useful move. But in the game, g captures on h4 was played, and now even queen comes to f4 with check, king g8, and the rook to c7. So you're threatening queen f7 check, followed by queen captures on g7 checkmate, but also just rook captures on b7. So rook to e7 was played, which defends both bishops, and now there is only one move that wins, but you guys being amazing players as you are, no doubt you've already found it. Yes, of course, I'm talking about queen capture. I'm only kidding. Queen captures on h4. That is the move, and now there's nothing more to be done. The rook is hanging, the bishop is hanging. If the rook moves, then the queen is hanging, and there is no defending this position. If, of course, you go knight g6 to attack the queen and defend the rook, you forgot about the bishop on b1, so I know that's not true. Knight to d7, blocking the white rook, but now just rook captures on b7. There was no way to avoid losing anything. Queen to f8, and now rook to c7, preparing for the pass b pawn to start marching forward, like b7 and then rook to c8. So knight captures on e5 was played, now bishop captures on e5, and he was in this position on move 35 that Frederik Svane resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Whatever you do is insufficient. If you go for the bishop, then the rook on e7 will hang, and of course if you play rook captures on c7, you can still capture with the pawn, it's still winning, but you can also just capture with the bishop, and then you're just up a full light square bishop, with black having zero counterplay. b7, b8 is coming, and that's it. So yeah, beautiful game. Rapid section of the Biel Chess Festival 2025. Like I said, the lines in the game were beautiful. Some of the lines that weren't played, might be even more beautiful, but that's how it is with chess. Some of the most beautiful moves are never actually seen on the board, and that's why you have to be a chess player to enjoy chess. That's how it works. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Thomas Pasternak, Alan Chamberno, Seshadri Subramanian, Nick Lin, and Paul Hinamund for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on any wonderful suggestions such as this one and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.